It's not even about shooting your film on film or shooting your film on digital. The fact that most films now are not presented in 35 millimeter means that the war is lost. And digital projections, that's just television in public.
It has really good color. This is going to be boring for a lot of people, right? You ready? It has really good color science. So the skin tones versus the world is you can really bend it to what looks like a Kodak film stock very easily.
All right, so the first recipe I shot with was Kodak Gold, and it all starts by being on classic chrome. Grain effect is going to be set to strong and small. Now we have to set the white balance to daylight, and this is where the film recipe really takes shape because you have to adjust the tint of the
When I started film photography, I think the thing that pulled me in was the pressure that came with each exposure. The fact that there's a concrete price tied to each shot you take, and a messed up shot means money wasted. It was something that forced me to learn from my mistakes and try to actively improve as a photographer. Everyone talks about how film photography slows you down as a shooter, how you can no longer fire off 100 photos in 3 seconds. The fact that it makes you slow down and be more intentional, I think, connects people to their images more. They remember the specific decisive moment where they decided to press the shutter and make that photo. This video aims to be an investigation in the phenomenon of film, what film emulation says about us as humans and our society, and why we even pursue the film look in the first place. Now, as I make this video in late 2024, the year of our photographic lord, it's clear to us that we're all firmly in the age of the digital. Now, I was born in 2000. So I never truly knew an analog world, only remnants of one. Now, of course, cars were still gas combustion, and I'm sure we're still reliant on some analog technologies, but that fact becomes less and less true with each day. Photography, as an art form, finds itself in a place where the digital revolution happened 20 to 30 years ago and has firmly been the standard for the last 10, where we find 4K cameras ready to capture as soon as we need them to in everybody's pocket. Now, automobiles, for instance, are currently undergoing their own digital revolution, with all the new EVs you see coming to market and the autonomous features that manufacturers are starting to offer. But cameras have kind of been settled. You only really see gradual spec boosts year after year. We are drowning in a river of moving and still digital images made up of pure data, and with that has brought a ton of pros and cons. Now, if we ignore all of the obvious creature comforts that come along with digital, like exposure assists, crazy high dynamic range, complex autofocus, crazy sharp sensors and lenses, what has this shift meant for the art form? Well, to me, in my eyes, it's been the democratization of image creation. Now, bear with me. Back when film photography was the most dominant format, the access and barrier to entry was incredibly restricted. On one hand, you have a highly technical and scientific hobby, and on the other hand, you have prices for development, film, cameras, printing, and archiving, reserving the space for the people who really cared about photography. And to do simple things like, let's say, make a wedding album, took so much more of a hassle then versus now. The digital revolution has made it so easy for anyone to enter this space. Anyone who's mildly inspired by scrolling on social media can immediately whip out their phone and start practicing photography like I and many others did when they began. This has progressed to the point where literally the newest iPhone can shoot 4K 120 FPS in a ProRes file format in a log color space to an SSD. So now that anyone can take the most cinematic video of their dog running in the park or whatever concert they were at the night before. But, if the digital world has progressed so mightily, then why are there so many avenues available to us to take our high fidelity camera signals and essentially turn them into lo-fi images? Why do we spend so much money on cameras that have incredible low light performance only to throw noise or grain back in it in post? Why do we spend entire paychecks on crazy sharp lenses only to add blur in Davinci Resolve? Why do we emulate film at all? The amount of rap music videos that I've seen on YouTube that are graded so well that I can't tell the difference between digital and film is crazy. You even see these looks popping up in advertising more and more, from Starbucks ads to healthcare campaigns to sports branding. And I don't even need to break down the prevalence of these looks on social media and all of the film emulation tutorials, including mine, and cinematic vlogs on TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts. What even is our favorite thing about film? These are my central questions, and I've already given my humble opinion on them, but I still think I'm gonna need to hear from more people. What is your favorite thing about film photography in like a filmmaking standpoint or in like a photography standpoint? Either one.
I think more on like a film standpoint. I just think that like why we emulate it so much now is that like to me, even though like my reality is very crisp, like I see things very crisp, and that's what digital is. Like we see everything so like high quality, and that's wonderful. Oddly enough, film just feels like way more real. And when I think of movies from the 2000s beyond, they just have a very comforting energy because they look a little, I don't know, they look more real to me than the best quality digital film. And I think that evokes a feeling that's just like irreplaceable.
So I feel the reason why I appreciate film is because in general I just appreciate the evolution of things in general when it comes to like buildings, music, film, electronics, gadgets, and all that stuff. So when it comes to film, it's more so just appreciating where it started and kind of like continuing that legacy and making sure people don't forget about it.
My favorite thing about film is I'm blanking now. The fact that it is tangible. There's a tangible photo. It's not like up in the cloud somewhere being pulled down. And I do feel like that tangibility makes it a lot more intentional. You're a lot more intentional with the photos that you take. It makes you take your time more, and I feel like it does make me appreciate my surroundings more because I'm focused on what's going on and like how to make it look the best that I can.
Yeah, I feel like the film photography is something that can make you feel like you're traveling to the past because it makes you somewhat practice patience is what I wanted to say. First of all, film is very expensive, as you were saying, and we kind of concluded with the fact that, thank you, Jazzer. Thanks, Jen. No, we kind of concluded that every shot is incredibly expensive, and it makes you just kind of hold off on taking pictures and be present in the moment at times rather than just like taking pictures of everything, and actually really pay attention to what photos you're taking, and then, you know, just kind of be surprised after they're fully developed. Sometimes months after the photo shoot took place. Yeah.
I think it's about more than just the tactical experience or the feeling in the moments. It hasn't been that long since film photography hasn't been in the spotlight. It's only been 10 to 15 years, yet we're already seeing a massive resurgence in the art form. And I think that's due to a demographic-wide rejection of modern technology. I think that there is a generational authenticity crisis. And I say generational because we see boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Z all grapple with this lack of authenticity. We see this world get harder and harder to parse through what is real and what is not. And that's almost the theme of this year with the rise of AI. EVs are great, don't get me wrong, and we should definitely be manufacturing them to be the dominant model in the next 10 years. But giving me minimalist controls where I have to fiddle with an iPad to change my climate controls, or press some random capacitive button that gives me no feedback that I pressed it to change lanes is so silly. That's an L. Elon, I'm sorry, that's an L. And on the topic of Elon Musk, Enshittification, another concept that demonstrates how our modern technology sector is built on a house of cards. If you're unaware of this term, then that's probably a good thing. You have a life, that's great. But essentially, enshittification is the gradual decline of a service. As they shift from a user-centric model to a profit-driven model, their services decline, alienating their loyal customers and making the overall usage worse. Think early Instagram versus current Instagram, early Twitter versus current Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Think Facebook or Uber. They all profit max to the point where their service declines for their average user. I feel like as these concepts have progressed, we feel this in our bones as a generation. We still understand that the new features that manufacturers of EVs, phones, cameras, and other modern technology put out are cool and interesting. There's still a level of skepticism and ultimately rejection. These features are not things that are solving problems in previous iterations. These features are not things that people have been clamoring for year after year. A lot of these features are really just rebranded features that have been around for years before, but the branding makes them seem nice and shiny and new. I think this is the digital revolution. This is always where the digital revolution would lead us, to a world of very cheap and accessible tech. So in the context of photography, and if you find yourself feeling this way, then maybe a tactile experience that forces you to be in the moment might appeal to you. If you constantly find yourself paralyzed by analysis because you took so many photos and you can't sort through them, that might lead you to shoot some film. If you're super tired of the over-processed, super sharp, crazy clean images and colors, then maybe you might find yourself wanting to emulate film. Overall, as a new generation of storytellers, I think we are heavily pulled toward the stories that start from authentic experiences. The market for the crazy sci-fi epics or the superhero sagas isn't what it used to be in the last 20 years. Of course, our creative class is vast and diverse, and we pull from inspiration all over the creative map. But I think the popularity and trend of film photography and film emulation in the last 5 to 10 years shows us how a new generation of storytellers really feels.